Hello, welcome to Access, my name's Nate, and in this video I get to talk to you about The Witcher. As regular viewers will know, The Witcher 3 is a particular favourite of mine, a complex depiction of a world torn apart by war as explored by the weary, but deep down honourable outsider Geralt. And as most people who've been alive lately will know, Netflix has now made a show that takes place in the world of The Witcher, starring Henry Cavill and featuring a host of characters and locations familiar from the game.
Don't judge me.
This means there are three main versions of The Witcher story out there. The original books by Andrzej Sapkowski, the games by CD Projekt Red, and the Netflix series. And in this video, we'll be seeing how they fit together, which you should play, read or watch first, how the timelines cross over, and how they relate to each other. It makes sense to start, like The Witcher itself, with the books.
Let's see these books of yours.
The world of The Witcher began life as a short story, one called The Witcher, written by Sapkowski for Fantastica magazine in Poland in the 1980s. Other short stories followed, building a cast of characters and locations that form the basis of this world. The publication and translation history of these stories is a little bit muddled, but if you're thinking about getting into the books, the key things to know are: you should start with The Last Wish and then Sword of Destiny. These are collections of those early short stories. These collections jump around in time, which, if you've played any of the games or have dipped into the show, can be pretty confusing. Don't be put off, they're heading somewhere specific. And once these collections are done, the book series, beginning with Blood of Elves, transitions into much more conventional novels. Sapkowski finished writing the Witcher saga in 1999 with The Lady of the Lake, and although he followed it up in 2013 with Season of Storms, set during the time of The Last Wish, Lady of the Lake marked the conclusion of the original tale of Geralt, Ciri and Yennefer. The next important thing to note is that both CD Projekt Red's games and the Netflix show are adaptations of these books. They have nothing to do with each other directly and, crucially, will never show the same bits of story because they approach this adaptation in very different ways. The Netflix show is a pretty direct version of Sapkowski's books brought to the screen. The first season, which is all that exists at the moment, covers the events of The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. It takes the events of those short stories, the foundations of the novels to come, and turns them into its own time-skipping narrative that retells how Geralt became bound to Ciri, fell in love with Yennefer, kinda, and the beginnings of the war with Nilfgaard. The approach of the games, meanwhile, is to adapt the world rather than the events of the story. CD Projekt's adaptations take place after the story of the books has concluded. There's a gap of a few years and Geralt wakes up at the start of the first game, released back in 2007, with that ultimate plot fix, amnesia.
I remember nothing.
Creating a narrative break that gives the games the space to tell their own story. Of the three main Witcher games, only number 3 is on PlayStation, so in theory PS4 players have two sources of backstory to catch up on: the original books, which are now being adapted by the Netflix show, and the first two games, which begin their narrative after the books are finished. But here's the thing, if you want to play The Witcher 3, you don't really need to know all that stuff at all. While it continues plot threads from the previous games and features characters and locations from the books, The Witcher 3 is pretty self-contained, designed to be played on its own. It is a giant leap ahead of the other games and is a brilliantly faithful evocation of the things which made the Witcher books so compelling and original, without retelling their stories. At its best, the game's individual quest lines, the Bloody Baron, Fyke Isle Tower, the incredible story of Gauntler O'Dim, play out like new additions to Sapkowski's standalone short stories. The main plot isn't really the draw at all. It's an excuse to bump into Geralt's finest companions and foulest enemies while spending time in this atmospheric world. To summarise everything, the Witcher books tell the story of Geralt, Ciri and Yennefer, a story which is being adapted, quite faithfully it seems, by the Netflix show. There are no spoilers for the games in the show because the CD Projekt series takes place years after the events of the book. You can consider them excellent ways to get a better understanding of this world and who Geralt is. Although you should be aware that if you're currently reading the books or watching the show, The Witcher 3 will take for granted bits of information which will count as major spoilers for you. Like, really big, because it's set in the future and that is how time works. Hopefully this leaves you with a clearer idea of how the different versions of The Witcher fit together. Let us know in the comments if watching the show has brought you back to the game, your thoughts on the books or anything else Witcher related at all. Subscribe to the channel because of course you should, and we'll see you again soon.
For the players.